Choroscope, where indeed we spent all of yesterday with the prologue time trial. Today we remain based here for two stages of the race, a road race this morning and a team time trial for the 22 teams this afternoon. But more of that in a few minutes. Let's first of all talk about that prologue yesterday. Greg LeMond, the defending champion, no form all year, pops up with a fine second place and is now just 4 seconds off the race lead. LeMond turned up yesterday with yet another pair of innovative handlebars, and who knows, they may have helped him score that fine ride. But the winner yesterday was Thierry Marie of France. No stranger to the prologue victory in the first yellow jersey, because he won this race back in 1986. And then remember that Greg LeMond went on to win the Tour de France that year. Well, our tip didn't do too badly either, did he? Raul Alcala of Mexico, he led for quite a long way and finally finished in 3rd place overall. Now, Raul Alcala is going to have a good Tour de France. But let's have a look now back at the season so far. The World Cup races, the other big tours, you'll notice 1 or 2 top names are missing from the results, and names like Alcala are already in them. This season, competition has been more intense than ever. And in the first race of the year, Paris-Nice, Miguel Indurain repeated his 1988 win, ahead of Ireland's Stephen Roach. Then the opening World Cup race, which followed from Milan to San Remo, was won by Gianni Bugno in record time ahead of Rolf Goltz. Bugno was a surprise winner here, but as the season unfolded, he would become a household name. Over to Belgium, and another Italian win as national champion Moreno Argentin scored in the Tour of Flanders, taking the lead in the World Cup when he beat Rudy Darmans in the sprint. The French opened their classic season with Paris-Roubaix and the most exciting finish ever in the race's long history. It was between Canadian Steve Bauer and Belgium's Eddie Plankett on the left. A millimetre was the official verdict in favour of Plankett after more than 160 miles. A dead heat would have been more honest, because even the camera can occasionally lie. There was no one in sight when Eric Van Lancker came home to win the Liège-Bastogne-Liège Classic in the Belgian Ardennes. Van Lancker isn't a regular winner either, but he certainly picks the best races when he decides to win. 2 World Cup victories then for Peter Post's Panasonic team. In the Amstel Gold Race in Holland, it appeared at first the whole field was fighting it out, but in fact the first 2 riders were being caught right on the line, and Adrie van der Poel was the man to steal a home win after illness had kept him away from the limelight. It was close, and Luke Rusin made the mistake of preparing for victory instead. So the World Cup has ended for the moment and will resume in Brighton a week after the Tour de France with the Wincanton Classic. And there couldn't be a closer situation. Argentin leads by 1 point over Bugno and 2 points over Darmans. The Tour season began in Spain with Italy still on top, Marco Giovanetti surprisingly beating Pedro Delgado. While in America, Boston turned out in its thousands to welcome Mexican Raul Alcala as winner of the 2nd Tour de Trump, a 10-day race that runs along the East Coast. The Mexican has won twice in America. Now he's looking for the Tour de France. Robert Miller put Scotland on the map in June with a win in the Dauphiné Libéré race, Britain's first win for almost 30 years. And in the Tour of Italy, that man Bugno was at it again, leading from start to finish, to copy Eddy Merckx, who did it in 1973. And to bring us up to date, Sean Kelly, just a week ago, proved he was ready for his final Tour de France with victory in the Tour of Switzerland, only weeks after coming back from injury. And behind Sean Kelly in the Tour of Switzerland, by the way, was Scotland's Robert Miller. He's having his best season since 1984, when indeed he finished 4th in this Tour de France. And we'll certainly see more of Robert as we go down towards the Alps and the Pyrenees. Well, as ever alongside me, Paul Sherwin, veteran of 7 Tours de France. Paul, in that review, we didn't see mention of names like Delgado, LeMond and Fignon. What's gone wrong there?
Well, Delgado maybe should have been mentioned because he was 2nd in the Tour of Spain, but he's a rider who only axes his whole season on the Tour de France, so maybe that's why we haven't spoken about him already. Fignon tried all through the year. He tried in the Classics. He's tried in some of the other stage races. He fell off in the Tour of Italy, so he's not had a lot of luck, to mention himself. And then Le Mans, well, he had a very hard start to the year. It's difficult when you're the world champion because everybody wants to see you. He had an infection in his chest, but now I think we saw what he did yesterday. He's really come to form at the right time. He's prepared himself specially. He looks fit, and I think yesterday's result proves that he is fit.
Paul, we're not very long away from the start, but very quickly, can you tell me about the tactics we're likely to see this morning from the Castorama Rally team?
Well, they'll obviously try and keep the race together because when you've got the yellow jersey in the team, you want to keep it as long as possible. They'd like to go into the team time trial with the yellow jersey this afternoon. But there are a lot of other teams behind who'd like to take the jersey off his shoulders. There are a few sprint bonuses along the stage today, so there could be some of the sprinters who are just behind Sean Kelly, for instance, could take the yellow jersey for this morning.
All right, well, the course itself is over 138 kilometres. As I say, it's based here from Futuroscope back again. It's a very pretty route, and it goes out around the department of the Vienne.
And the field now rolling out for the real start of the Tour de France, the open countryside that abounds down here south of the Loire Valley. And the happy yellow jersey this morning of Thierry Marie. A little bit surprised, maybe, but he's done it before because, of course, he won the prologue time trial in 1986. And this is a breakaway which has formed, and we're only 6 kilometres into the stage this morning. This breakaway has gone. I think it was Ronan Pensek who started the move on the inside of our picture. This is Claudio Chiappucci, the Carrera rider who rode well in Paris-Nice this year. Frans Masson is here, winner of the Wincanton Classic in England last year, and the main field not interested at all. Also in that breakaway, I can confirm, in fact, Steve Bauer, and that is why Bob Roll in the centre of our picture is in no hurry at all to take up the chase. Well, this breakaway is absolutely flying. The latest time check now, they are 8 minutes ahead, and Pensek has been given a gift here. The main field have made a terrible mistake, even though it is the first morning of the Tour de France. Steve Bauer, too, fourth in this race 2 years ago, a former wearer of the leader's yellow jersey, and he's gone clear. This has been one of those snip little breakaways that you dream of, and Bauer is now going to give it its all. The 7-11 team will be delighted. It's taking all of the pressure away from Andy Hampston because Steve Bauer's up here. So too the same could be said for Greg LeMond because he is on the Z team, and they are without doubt the two most dangerous men in that leading group. Chiappucci, a strong Italian rider with no great victories to his credit, and look at this, the main field are simply not racing. Laurent Fignon, unconcerned, and yet the yellow jersey of Thierry Marie is surely now going away. The wind is absolutely gale force here today, just like it was yesterday for the prologue. They have been forecasting gusts of 60 kilometres an hour. Well, that looked, some riders shot it up the inside there. It could well have been Johnny Carlson, who went from Denmark. But now the field are finding some reaction. So this is Carlson from Denmark, who's gone clear. As far as we can ascertain, he is something like 6 minutes behind those four leaders. Well, this is mystifying. Nobody has taken up the chase. And the field is stopping. The field is being stopped, in fact, and as far as we know, although the mechanic here thinks there's been a crash, as far as we know, and one rider is down, it's Delgado. Delgado is down, so there was a crash. The first pileup of the Tour, and Pedro Delgado is one of the men who's come off. The other rider there is Laurent Biondi. But while they sort themselves out, we can go back up towards the end here now. This is the finishing circuit in Futuroscope. And Bauer is on the left of our picture. That's Frans Masson on the right, Pensek in the centre, Chiappucci out into the moment. Pensek now taking second position here behind Frans Masson, the former Dutch champion. It's slightly uphill this finish, and Masson is going to take it. So Frans Masson wins. Pensek gets second place here. We can see it in slow motion already. Third is Chiappucci, and Bauer is fourth. Johnny Carlson coming home. And Guido Winterberg is taking sixth place there. This is the main field sprint. And it's Olaf Ludwig who's bringing the whole bunch over the line. But believe me, they are over 10 minutes behind. This is a turn-up for the books today. Here's the result. Franz Massen confirmed as the winner, but look at the gap. 8 minutes back to Carlsen, and in fact, 10 minutes back to the main field. And that surprising breakaway this morning has done this to the overall classification. Steve Bauer is now the new leader by just 2 seconds ahead of Franz Massen. Chiappucci is third. Pensek is up into fourth place. And last night's leader, Thierry Marie, he's dropped back to 7th slot, 10 minutes 24 seconds behind. And Greg LeMond, 8th, 10 minutes 28 seconds behind Steve Bauer. That's the overall situation. It's quite a surprise. And Paul Sherwin is now down in the crowd with Steve himself.
Steve Bauer today, very strange race. Only a short race, but it seems to have made quite a big difference already.
Well, I'm happy. I think I was always looking for a breakaway like this in the Tour de France, and in the years past there were breakaways like this. You know, a breakaway from the beginning of the race taking a lot of time, and then you know the break being a bit reduced by the end. But it seems that we've finished with quite a bit of time, and I'm very happy. You know, now we have to look for our team to do a good team time trial, and if we do a good team time trial, I'll be in place to have the jersey, or I'll be in a good place to get it back.
But it makes a whole difference to the Tour de France now, because to give a rider like you and Roland Fonsek such a lead, it's going to be a very different tour in the next few days.
Well, we could see it being a very open tour because of this. You know, riders, you know, trying to get back that time, or you know, with mainly the favorites staying together probably before the time trial in the mountains. But other riders, I think, will try to do the same thing in the week to come.
Will you keep the jersey this afternoon?
We have a good team, and I'm optimistic. I think Buckler, they also have a good team for the team time trial. Carrera also, Zed also. So the 4 riders that were in front, they all have strong teams. So it's difficult to predict who will have the jersey after the team time trial.
Thank you very much.
So the first yellow jersey for Canadian Steve Bauer, and I bet Thierry Marie didn't think he would lose it so early on after his prologue win yesterday. And by the way, Steve Bauer did this a couple of years ago when he won the morning stage, and he went on to lose it in the afternoon's team time trial. I wonder if that will happen this time. Join us after the break.
Welcome back. Well, as we saw this morning, Steve Bauer has taken the yellow jersey, but not without encountering a few problems along the way. The trouble started for him on the 71-kilometre mark of this morning's stage, when local sheep farmers apparently decided to claim the honour of being the first protesters of this year's tour by littering the road with sheepskins and bags of wool. The idea behind the protest was to draw attention to the fact that they're unhappy with the prices they're getting for their product. Not as unhappy as Bauer was. At the time, he was leading a 4-man breakaway, which was nearly 8.5 minutes ahead of the peloton, and all 4 had to dismount and pick their way through the obstacles. By the time the peloton arrived, most of the offending articles had been removed, but fortunately for Bauer, the delay wasn't enough to stop him claiming the lead and the yellow jersey, which, by the way, I'm reliably informed, is not made of wool, but it's man-made. I hope for his sake it's made in France. Whether he's still in possession of the maillot jaune by the end of this afternoon will depend on the team time trial. And here to explain a few of the tactics is Phil.
The tactics in the team time trial are not difficult to understand. It's the one time in the Tour de France where each member of the team, the domestiques, have a chance of directly helping their team leader. On the road, each rider will race at the front, perhaps pacing the line, for about 200 metres. Then he'll move into the direction the wind is blowing from, allowing some shelter for the rest who come through on his right, while the wind blows him gently back down the line. Very often, the team leader will sit at the back of the race, demanding more speed from the domestiques. On other occasions, the team leader himself might find he's got to work with the group. In this case here, as it was last year, Pedro Delgado was in trouble in the team time trial, and the team were obliged to slow down and wait for him. There's no point in leaving behind the team leader, because realistically, he's the only man who can win the Tour de France for them. He's not just good at time trialing, he can climb mountains as well.
And the 22 teams in the Tour de France today, which start 4 minutes apart in the 44.5 kilometres team time trial, are going to need all of their skill and intelligence to avoid the crosswinds which are ripping across the course today. And it's over the very exposed roads out and about Futuroscope. So the team time trial, the riders will need plenty of shelter. This is the arrival of the Wyman team, completing their 44.5 kilometre circuit of Futuroscope. And the Wyman team, led by Adri van der Poel, are going to come very close to the best time so far. The Aliostia team from Italy is going to be very close. They're given the same time. The clock says they're number one. They must have beaten Aliostia by fractions of a second right on the line. So the Wyman team, led by their team leader, Adri van der Poel, and the former Belgian champion, Carlo Boemans, are in. We're out on the course again now, and the gale force conditions are persisting. And you can see the formation here, indicating the wind at the moment coming from around 1 o'clock. The top right-hand corner of our screen, as the riders try to take diagonal shelter. And there's a very good description of that. The wind blowing from the right shoulders of the rider. And the boys at the back of the Benesto team, Paul, are hanging on in there by the look of it.
Well, it's very difficult to hang on, especially when you get to this stage of the game. The riders have done their turn at the front. They're stripping back a little bit. And when a rider can't keep his wheel on the wheel in front of him, he has to try and get into the gap to bridge the gap for his teammate. Here you can see at the back here, one of the riders having a really hard time trying to get back on. It looks like Javier Luca is really suffering. He keeps leaving a gap while the other rider is coming from the front, and he'll try and get into the line again.
Well, this, of course, is Pedro Delgado's team, and if you were watching with us a year ago, you can remember the disastrous start that Delgado had. Not only did he lose time in the prologue time trial, Lurkamp, by the way, is going off here, but Delgado also lost time in the team time trial. He was, in fact, in the position that this man is in, Lurkamp, last year, when Delgado is dangling off the back and the team were told to wait for him. Well, they won't wait for Javier Lurkamp. I'm afraid he's one of the domestiques of the team. He'll be slipping away now. He may have given a lot of effort early on, and now it's all over for him. But not only is the time for the ride taken on the 5th rider to cross the line, therefore 5 riders at least must be together, because you're only as strong as the 5th man in the race. That's when the clock will stop, not on the other 4 riders. It means the team must stay together at least 5 strong. So Lurkamp is dropped off the back. But apart from that, the Benesto team look to me as though they're going pretty well. Look at that gap already. There's the formation. All of the riders using these disc wheels, which I would have thought today, Paul, especially in these winds, they're rather difficult to keep the bike steady.
Well, it's not so much of a problem when they're using them in the rear, because the big problem in these crosswinds is when they try and use 2 discs, one on the front wheel, because with the crosswinds you have a great deal of difficulty steering the front end of the bike.
There's Dominique Arnaud, the only Frenchman on this virtually all Spanish team. Benesto, by the way, is a Spanish bank. And number 21 is the number of Delgado. All of the team leaders carry 1 on the number. Sitting at the back here, Abelardo Rondon, who's the only Colombian rider in this Spanish setup. At least they'll speak the same language.
Yeah, but you can see the team of Delgado here is a very drilled squad. They've got a one big long line across the road, and Arnaud has just left a gap for the rider who's come from the front to slip in there. Arnaud has obviously put a lot of effort into this move earlier on, and he's trying to recuperate a little bit. So the rider who's just done his turn will drift down in the shelter and get back into his place, and they'll carry on again.
These conditions really are difficult today. They are very, very strong. The wind is blowing, in fact, straight into our commentary position. So if I sound a little bit muffled, it's because the wind in here is blowing everything just about everywhere. Nice position as the riders are being pulled through. It looks like it could be Miguel Indurain at the front now as he turns on the power and drags the line out, and they're scrabbling for the wheels at the back. Look. Rondon is in trouble at the back of this line. We've just seen Lurkamp slip away. It looks like Rondon might be the next. The pressure is now telling. The little men, they come out in these time trials. They have to give their all. That's all the team leader will expect from them. He'll expect 100% effort as long as they can give it. And when they can't give 100%, they should sit at the back and stay out of the way or drop off. Now we're back to the finishing line. This is the arrival now of Chateau Dax with 2 East German riders on the line. The clock, don't forget, stopping on the 5th man to go over the line. The time to beat is Aliostia, 54 minutes and 42 seconds. And that is the same time, indeed, that Wyman have also recorded in their finish. But Chateau d'Ax, a little bit out of it. They finished with their full counters there, 5 men over the line, and they've got second best time, 55.14. Well, I think that's a mistake because we've already seen Wyman come in with a better time. So as we wander on our helicopter now to pick up the next team, you get some idea of the agricultural countryside here in the department of Vienne. And they say that is why they originally thought of the idea of building Futuroscope, to try and attract more business to this mainly farming area. And the Tour de France, especially the riders, will be rather glad to go away, I think, because of these winds which weren't expected. The day before the Tour started, the temperatures were 80+ degrees and the riders are enjoying every minute of it. So Benesto team, they're approaching the finish, but there's still some little way out on the course, in fact, because the next team that should come in will be the one we're waiting for, especially after this morning's performance, because it's Steve Bauer's 7-11 squad, the rider in the yellow jersey. The time, and it's a little bit complicated, so I'll explain it to you as carefully as I can. The time, as I say, is taken on the 5th rider to cross the finishing line, but the time goes to each rider's individual standing in the race, which means that Bauer, with a 2-second lead over Van Bassen, his team must beat the Buckler team by 2 seconds. Or rather, Massen's team must beat Bauer's team by 2 seconds, and the yellow jersey will go across to Franz Massen. We're looking at the situation here after 20 kilometers. Wyman with the best time there, but they're in now, and the time is almost equal to the best time. TVM, Phil Anderson's team, has gone through now, 3 seconds down, but Chiappucci's Carrera team, he was the rider who has now come into the overall reckoning in 3rd place after that breakaway this morning. And that's interesting, actually, Paul, to see that Chiappucci's team has pulled out a good one so far.
They've always done good time trials in the past, especially when Stephen Roach used to ride for them, and probably motivated by the fact that Chiappucci was in that front group this morning and stands a chance of taking the yellow jersey. They've really lifted themselves to this occasion.
With now Phil Anderson's team, with Phil Anderson indeed, number 161 at the back of the line. The fact that Anderson is here, keeping the team going, means the whole line is going, as they say, through and off. The lead will take the race through, swing over to the right, into the wind, and up on the lee side of the wind comes the next rider. Back to the finish. This is 7-11, and Steve Bauer is in this group of riders here. 54.42 is Wyman's time at the moment, and they've confirmed now that Wyman are the new leaders, but 7-11 are coming up, and this is a very good time indeed by the 7-11 team, and Bauer in the centre left of our picture is bringing them home. So Steve Bauer is not going to give up ease that at this point. They are the best time of the day, but of course the teams who specialise in the team time trial, the people like Benesto, Buckler, Stephen Roach's Histor team, Castorama Rally and PDM have still to come home. Out again with Phil Anderson. This is the situation when the riders came through the 36-kilometre point. 7-11 set the best time then. They are now home with the best time of the moment. Ariosta were second, Wyman were third. They are the top 3 teams on the finishing line at the moment. 7-11, Wyman and Ariosta is the order on the finishing board. Again, Carrera coming good in 4th place, because the Carrera team is not a particularly strong team time trial team since Stephen Roach left the team a couple of years ago. And Chiappucci, who was in with a real shot at winning Paris-Nice this year, lost his high position because of a bad team time trial. Some people say it's unfair to include a team time trial and then put the times to the individual riders' classification, because after all, you're only as strong as your team. Others say, well, the Tour de France, like all multi-day races, are team races, and you should be as strong as your team, and your team should be as strong as you. But it certainly picks out the weak riders in the squad. A lot of work being done here. The riders clearly going into the wind here. They're having to work out of the saddle. Once they swing and pick up the wind behind them, they'll become in those low crouch styles. And I would think in this wind today, Paul, once they turn with the wind, they're going to do something like 65, 70 kilometres an hour.
Well, it's very fast to the finish, with this, especially with this tailwind on the way in here. They will be doing that sort of speed, something around about 40 miles an hour. You can see here they've got a fantastic line straight across the road here. There's a rider at the back starting to suffer a little bit. That was Jacobs, actually, who was forced into the team on the request of Phil Anderson. He said he wouldn't ride the Tour de France unless his teammate was included in this squad, and it looks as if he's suffering at the moment. So the team director's not going to be too pleased with the fact that he's been forced into the team by Anderson.
So there he is at the back, Patrick Jacobs, number 164. And you see he's allowed that little gap to open. Once the elastic snaps, you're blown away. And his head's going up and down. If we could see his face, it would be a picture of pain. Of that I am quite certain. Jan Siemens is number 168, just in front of Jacobs. Now you can see the smooth line working at the front. The riders keeping tight formation. They'll ride about 100 meters on the front, then he'll slightly ease the pressure. Very often the riders flick their left elbow out, which is the indication to the man behind that he should now begin his pass. And here's the Carrera team. This is the team, of course, that Chiappucci is on, and has now been accelerated into the top rider in that team after that long, long breakaway this morning that gained over 10 minutes. There he is, where's 171, the leader of the team. And I think he'll pick up some strong support here from people like Acacio da Silva, number 173, the first yellow jersey in the Tour de France last year when the racing started proper in Luxembourg. Do you remember? Eric Breking of Holland won the prologue, and then Acacio da Silva broke away in Luxembourg and became the race leader for quite a few days. He's in the team here now, playing the role of domestique. There's Garotto, another strong man. Again, the gaps forming in this team as well. The wind is bad enough, but of course when you've ridden an almost 4-hour race this morning, and then you've got to come out to do it all again, and then of course it makes it that little bit harder. Chiappucci sitting at the back, seemingly happy enough. He's also the leader in the King of the Mountains competition. So there's a couple of small climbs this morning. He scored best, and so he's the leader of the King of the Mountains for the time being at least. That was also a competition he won in Paris-Nice at the beginning of the year. Here come the Carreras then, up towards the line. They've lost a few seconds to 7:11, so Steve Bauer is gaining time over Chiappucci, pushing him further away. 54:53 is the time for Carrera, as they take, at the moment, 4th place. It's a good show of defiance by Claudio Chiappucci, is that he was 9 seconds behind Steve Bauer this morning, after this morning's race. He's lost a few more seconds now. 1 or 2, and I mean just 1 or 2 of the 900 pressmen we saw there on the finishing line, waiting to see just if there will be a challenge later on from Jan Ross's Buckler team. Looking here at Helvetia La Suisse, Henri Manders sitting at the back, who came into this race at the very last minute. He didn't expect to be riding the Tour de France this week. And you can see now the new style technology involved in cycling. We used to call these the funny bikes when Cyril Guimard brought along a bicycle with a sloping forward top tube, which looked rather like one of the old-fashioned butcher's meat bikes, and he asked the press to give it a name, and he had a competition, and the winner received one of the bikes as a prize, and somebody said, call it Le Profil, the profile bike, and that's how it all started. And Guimard, of course, all of the ideas now copied and built on, and the result is they all ride these very strange bikes that give them a much better aerodynamic position.
This is a well-drilled squad here from Paul Coshley, the Helvetia La Suisse team. He's very, very meticulous in his preparation of this kind of event, but at the moment they don't really seem to have the motivation of the team that they had last year when Steve Bauer was riding with them, and it must have been quite a shock to their morale when Steve Bauer jumped away this morning and took the yellow jersey.
In fact, Paul Coshley, the manager of this team, was very sorry when Steve Bauer had to leave him. He simply couldn't afford to pay Bauer the salary he'd been offered by the 7-Eleven squad, which is reported to be over $500,000. situation here at 20 kilometres. Panasonic has now gone on top at 20 kilometres, 23 minutes 34 seconds. Zed, Greg LeMond's team, and Ronan Pensek now 9 seconds slower. And out of the top 5 have gone the 7-11. That won't be too serious at this minute, but it could well see Pensek coming into the yellow jersey, Paul, by the end.
Well, the Z team have always put in good performances in the team time trials over the last few years. They've always been there, 3rd, 4th, 5th position. But with the fact that this year they have Greg LeMond in the team, and the fact that today Ronan Pensek could take the yellow jersey, well, that's going to be a very big boost to their ego, and they'll probably come up with a good performance. Panasonic, obviously, getting back to the form that they had a long time ago as the unbeatable team in team time trials, leading at the moment.
Ronan Pensek has started this afternoon's time trial, 21 seconds behind Steve Bauer overall. And he's already recuperated that time at 20 kilometres covered. So if progress continues, Steve Bauer will lose his yellow jersey to Ronan Pensek, but don't forget, of course, behind Pensek's Z team, we still have to see the Buckler team of Franz Masson. He's the RMO squad. 54 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. 7-11 are still on the leaderboard, but we're now being seen by the indication at 20 kilometres. They won't be there too much longer. The RMO team are coming home, and the fact that this close to 7-11 indicates that 7-11's time will not survive to the end of this race today.
In 1952, Rocky Marciano stepped into the ring.
Welcome back to Futuroscope. Now, this place is billed as the city of the 21st century, which is quite apt, really, because that's when large parts of it are due to be finished. And with no disrespect to what's actually quite a successful tourist attraction, you might wonder why the organisers of the Tour de France, with the whole of the country to choose from, decided to start the race at a theme park outside Poitiers. Well, the answer's quite simple. Money. 5 million francs, or over £500,000, is the going rate for putting your town on the Tour map these days. That's 10 times what Futuroscope paid last year simply to host a stage. In return, it gets 3,500 weekend guests in the shape of the race entourage and instant fame by association as the location of hundreds of radio, television and newspaper reports. Not least, it also attracts the public, who come for the race, which is free, of course, but can usually be persuaded to spend a few francs on other entertainment along the way. By the time the Tour rolls out of here for the next stage in Poitiers, Futuroscope will have raised its public profile perhaps 1,000-fold. And despite the cost, towns all along the route over the next 22 days are queuing up to do the same. Perhaps the only group of people unaffected by the hype and ballyhoo are the riders. To them, the towns could scarcely matter less, only the stretches in between. And for the latest on today's stage, let's rejoin Phil.
And this is the team we've been waiting to see, the arrival of the Z team, led by the world champion in the centre there, Greg LeMond. The time they need to do to take the yellow jersey from Steve Bauer is 53 minutes and 50 seconds. That has gone by. Steve Bauer has survived at least Ronan Pensek's challenge, because they come home with 54 minutes and 17 seconds for second place for the Z team. And in fact, out on the course, the Z team were ahead of 7-11, and it does seem, Paul, that the 7-11 have done a superb ride over the closing kilometres.
Well, they have, but I think the Z team themselves had to slow down a little bit, because Pensek was in a lot of trouble there, and they probably had to slow down and wait for him. They couldn't let him drop off, because he was one of the riders who could keep in the yellow jersey for the first 10 days of this Tour de France.
So the Benesto team, by the way, with Pedro Delgado on, they have come in with a time of 55 minutes and 22 seconds. So they have lost almost a minute there, Pedro Delgado to Greg LeMond. That's at least a big slice of good news for Greg in these early stages of the Tour de France, because although we're seeing a strange Tour de France today with 4 unusual riders, I'll call them, at the top of the classification after this morning's run, the big leaders will be comparing each other as well during this afternoon's team time trial. We still have 6 teams to come, and among them, of course, the Buckler team with Franz Masson. And Masson starting this afternoon just 2 seconds behind Steve Bauer. So if his team comes home with a time more than 2 seconds better than what 7-11 have recorded, then Masson will be the rider in yellow tonight. Well, Bauer survived a big push from Z because at all the checks, Z were ahead of 7-11. And this could also provide something of a surprise in the result, Paul, the Once team from Spain, because they've been coming through the checks challenging Panasonic.
Well, they've had a very good year as well. This is one of the richest teams in Spain, if not one of the richest teams in the world at the moment. They're sponsored by the charity for the blind in Spain. They've got some good time trialists in there.
And they've also got, by the look of it, Paul, the whole team still in this formation. The teams have been coming into the finish here completely split up. They've got to finish 5 men, of course. No good coming home with 4 because the time will not stop till the 5th man arrives. Here's the situation now at 36 kilometers. Panasonic leading all the way through the checks, 46 minutes, 53 seconds. Once on our screen now, they're through there in 2nd place. 7-11, though, are now up to 3rd here, because earlier on the checks, the other teams have gone over them and pushed them right off the leaderboard, but they quite clearly have finished very, very strong indeed. And that says a lot for Steve Bauer after that long, hard breakaway this morning in virtually the same conditions that we're getting here this afternoon. Gale force winds, and as strong a wind as I can recall in the Tour de France for many years. Here's the Panasonic coming in. 7-11 is the team to beat with 54-12. Panasonic should do this, but they're not stealing a lot of time back, and they certainly have nobody here that will challenge now for the yellow jersey of Bauer, because there was nobody from this team in the leading move this morning. Panasonic 53-24, and I think that will be the time now that everybody must aim for the rest of the day, because that is the Panasonic team at their very best. They used to be the kings of the team time trial in the days when TI Rally sponsored them in Britain, and they had such great riders on the squad as Jerry Kinetterman and Jan Raas. Jan Raas here in a very different role now as manager of the Buckler team, and a great rival of Peter Post, who still manages the Panasonic squad, by the way. And if Buckler, and here we are now on screen, if Buckler can just get Masson up here today to bip 7-11 on the line, and then they'll have the first yellow jersey that they've had in that team. It's a brand new team. Now, what do you think, Paul? There's a lot of action going on here, and there's plenty at the front of the team. The boys at the back are struggling.
Well, they are doing, but it's a very difficult thing, this team time trial, especially the last few kilometres here. The wind is very, very strong, and the rider who's done his turn at the front, if he misses getting onto the wheel, it's very difficult to bridge the gap. You see one of the riders here, Sato. In fact, it looks as if it's
I think it's Twan Pols who's gone.
It might have been De Vries, Harry De Vries, I think.
Harry De Vries it was, who's just slipped through the way, and when you go quickly.
But once you lose the gap there, you can't get back onto the wheel, so you might as well just sit up and get into the finish as easily as possible.
So they've lost a man as they come towards the end. Again, a check at the situation at the finish line now. Panasonic lead, 7-11 are 2nd, and Z with Greg LeMond are 3rd. So at this minute in time, no change in the overall position as we come towards the end of the team time trial section. Steve Bauer is still the race leader. This is Edwig van Hooijdonk, the early leader of the Perrier World Cup last year, who's sitting at the back of the group. He put in a great bid to win the Belgian Championship the weekend before this tour started. He didn't quite catch up with Claude Coquillon, who won the title down in the Belgian Ardennes by Liège. Well, I basically wish he'd had some of that same form right now, because he looks to be struggling, and he's the team's leader, Paul.
Well, he's probably put a lot of energy into trying to get this yellow jersey, because for a team like Buckler, who don't stand a chance of winning overall in the Tour de France, they want as much publicity as they can get out of it. So all the riders will have given their maximum, because they only need to beat the 7-11 team by 2 seconds to put Frans Masson on the top of the leaderboard. They've got back together here now. They're very compact again. Maybe Van Hooijdonk was just having a little bit of a hard time there. As you can see in the green jersey, there's Frans Masson at the moment, leader of the points classification. Tonight he'd love to put that yellow tunic on.
Well, I'm sure before the Tour de France started, he never dreamt of doing that. Jan Raas read the move correctly this morning. He says he can't understand why the break succeeded by so much, but it happens on these short stages, is what he thinks. And as soon as the gap opened, the instruction was go as long and as fast as you can and see what happens. And the answer was, of course, more than 10 minutes gain at the finish. And it's probably going to shape the Tour de France for the next 5 or 6 days. And there is Frans Maassen rushing to the front of the line as quickly as he can. 2 seconds is all he's thinking about. Although we can't see him, Jan Roos is driving the car 25 metres behind this team and screaming his head off.
But you can almost see the speed of the riders here, Phil. One of the lads at the front there just having a quick drink, not forgetting that all the time they've had a hard ride this morning. It's very easy to blow up when you have 2 stages in the one day, and he's just getting a little bit more energy into himself there. Look at the speed there as the riders go through again. The rider in the second place there didn't have much time to recover. He'd done his turn. As we go back to the front here, Onse coming in with a good time, but not as good as the Panasonic time.
It could still take second place, Paul, because Onse have done a great ride here. Steve Hodge, the Australian, having his best season. Finished high up in the Tour of Italy. And he's happy in this team. He's bringing them home now. And they're coming up to the line. A little bit away from Panasonic, but nonetheless should be okay for second. 53.46. A very, very good performance indeed by Onse, and a challenge from an unexpected quarter there. But it's good to see Stephen Roche anxious to drive this team on. It's proving he has got some fitness in those legs now. He was quick to fall back in halfway down that line, because once a rider senses that the man behind him is beginning to suffer, they immediately take their position early in the line and go back up to the front to set the pace. They don't wait for the weak men to come by them at all. And in fact, they get very annoyed if they try to come by them. They want them to stay out of the way. Kilometre 36 then, back down the course. This is the situation. But no real news here. Panasonic, as they have done all the way, have led this race from start to finish at the moment, of course, but it looks as though that's the way it will now end. The Histor team coming home to finish. They're outside already the time of Panasonic. And Stephen Roche, Brian Holm in the Championship of Champions of Denmark's jersey there. The riders bunching together because the time will stop on the 5th rider to cross the line. As you can see when you watch the clock, it's stopped now, 53.46. Second place for Histor. So it's a good, strong finish for Stephen Roche, because disregard the Bauer situation, he has done better than most of the favourites.
Well, he has. They've come in over the last 15 kilometres extremely strongly, because they were never doing it very well at the intermediary time. So they must have really gone well over the last 10, 15 kilometres, while the other teams were starting to crack up a little bit. And we go back down here to the Castorama Rally team.
Well, Laurent Fignon. He's known himself what it's like to struggle in a team time trial in the past. And the question is he okay after that crash in the Tour of Italy, which eventually led to him giving up? He says himself he's not 100% fit yet, but he's hoping to ride himself in. Well, today is not the day to ride yourself into the race with this wind blowing. He's number 11 on the far right of our picture, and it looks as though he's still working in the group as well. It seems too, Paul, as though all 9 men are here. They haven't lost anybody.
Well, they haven't lost anybody at all, as they can't be very far from the finish now, maybe 1.5 kilometres to go. And then maybe they'll produce a surprise as well, because the teams who've been coming in towards the end here, they've improved a great deal, probably because they've been getting advice from their team managers of how hard the last 15, 20 kilometres is, so they've been starting slowly and pulling back the time over the last half of the course.
Well, it's certainly picked out the strong men on this race, and Steve Bauer is going to be a good leader, I think, because if anything, this wind is getting even stronger over this last half an hour. At the back of the group now is Pascal Simon, once led the Tour de France and one of the few riders ever to retire when wearing the leader's yellow jersey. He crashed and broke a shoulder blade, then continued for a number of days before finally he had to give up. And this is the team that this morning had Thierry Marie in yellow. And what a surprise it was that he isn't still in yellow, because really with a team like Castorama, they were the team that could have kept Thierry Marie in yellow in this team time trial. There's Fignon, and it looks to me, Paul, as though he is struggling.
Well, Fignon always looks to be struggling these days, especially in team time trials. He used to be one of the strongest riders in this kind of effort. He used to be one of the best time trialists in the world, but he seems to have lost a little bit in that quarter recently. However, when it comes to panache and aggression, knowing how to attack when it comes to the mountains, Fignon hasn't lost that. So he's not finished, but I think towards the end of his career, he's changing his tactics a little bit.
Well, over to our right there, you can see the buildings of Futuroscope. And again, no further confirmation of any changes. PDM, yes, PDM have come up here in the second place. They've nipped over Onse. So Sean Kelly's team are doing a very good ride, losing only 10 seconds to Panasonic at the 36-kilometer point. So this is interesting because Sean Kelly is saying that he wants to challenge for the yellow jersey in this year's Tour de France. Well, just to the right shoulder of the Castorama team is the hotel they're staying in tonight. But now they've got to go on the long, steady climb up towards the finishing line before they get the chance of a very, very, very welcome hot shower indeed. This has been a long, hard day for the riders in these conditions. Although the sun is now shining, in fact, it's been quite cold as well. The only good news is that the threat storms haven't materialized. Still trying to force the pace. Christophe Leven, number 13. Sidi Marie goes through on his shoulder. Marie's on the left of our picture now. He won the prologue yesterday. He's now trying to bring the team up to the finishing line. They're all anxious now to get the best time out of this they can. It's going to keep them right up amongst the leaders here. 53 minutes. It might just go to 54, but it's good enough for them. And so the Castorama Rally team are in. 53 minutes, 57 seconds, and that is the fourth best time. Just one team now left out on the course. Sean Kelly's PDM team, which is tremendously strong this year, with Raul Alcala and also Eric Breking. Here they are there, indeed, too, is Raul Alcala. Kelly's number 37.
Maybe a well-timed effort by the PDM team because we haven't seen any reference to them all the way through the intermediary times there, and they may well have got some very good advice from the team managers to know exactly what the circuit's like today, exactly what the finish is like, because I think the weather has changed a little bit towards the end, and maybe they're going to take advantage of a slight drop in the wind.
Well, this is a great mixture of talent, this team, because it has Dutchmen, Mexicans, 2 East Germans, an Irishman, a Belgian on this team, and yet they get on so well together. The catalyst is Jan Gispers, their team manager. He selects riders not just for the strength, but because of their personality as well. And Raul Alcala, Sean Kelly, Eric Breking are the riders who will be expected to do their job in the Tour de France this year. And it does appear they've only come onto the leaderboard at the penultimate check, and that means that they could well be coming strong as they come to the finish. The 7-11 certainly have been the best team over these last kilometres. They have survived to keep Steve Bauer in that leader's yellow jersey. There's Raul Alcala, we just caught a glimpse of him there. They're the team who are extremely annoyed about the escape this morning of those 4 riders. They were the only team that wanted to take up the chase, and for a while they limited the escape of those 4 men, and then found they were receiving no help at all from the rest of the race, so they stopped chasing. The result was an enormous gap that's gone out to over 10 minutes. So the last team then, making its way up to Futuroscope. The Science Theme Park here, just outside Poitiers, that has welcomed the Tour de France for the weekend, and what a hard weekend it's been. But I don't suppose that Steve Bauer will be complaining. Pedro Delgado not losing quite so much time at the end of the opening days as he did a year ago, but he's still conceding time to Greg LeMond. Laurent Fignon is also going to go out on the road to Nantes with a big time gap over Greg LeMond. Nothing insurmountable, but the gaps are already opening. It could be a very, very good Tour de France, this. And just look at these riders now at the back, scrambling for wheels. And then if they ease and drop off, it won't be so important as long as their strong men, Breking, Kelly and Alcala, are finishing in the first 5 who get the time to the individual classification. Riders who drop off get a different time, of course. You can just see for the first time the climb that they do face up to the finish. We're sitting right on top of the hill as they now open up the sprint for the finish. And look at this, it's going to be tight, it's going to be very tight. The clock is counting on the fifth man, and that might cost them the victory. It's gone, but the PDM team will not be far away. They'll take second place here, ever so close to Panasonic, 53 minutes and 31 seconds. So Sean Kelly's PDM team finished second in the team time trial, but there is no doubt that tonight the overall lead will stay on the shoulders of the Canadian rider Steve Bauer.
So here's the result of the team time trial, a win for Panasonic. In second place, Sean Kelly's PDM squad, and a surprising third slot, the Once team from Spain. Stephen Roach in fourth place with the Histor boys, and in fifth slot, you've got Laurent Fignon's Castorama rally squad. Overall, there was no change in the end. Steve Bauer has consolidated in that leader's yellow jersey, and in second place, Franz Masson, his team couldn't quite get the better of the 7-Eleven boys. The other two riders in the breakaway fill third and fourth places overall. Significantly though, all four many minutes ahead of the rest of the field.